Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. Here are some tips from my forthcoming book, Careers for Dummies. It will be out in June, but I thought I'd give you a little advanced look. It's going to be a series of videos. This first one is about choosing a career. Um, Career counselors and maybe even many young people make it more complicated than it needs to be. The reality is that there is no one right career for most people. And when one tries to get it to find a point on it. They try to get to perf- wait for the perfect career. They end up waiting on the sidelines for too long, and the liabilities of that usually outweigh just picking something that's a reasonable fit and then putting your effort into making the most you can of it. So really, it comes down to just choosing a career within a broad category of fit. I mean, clearly, if you are like lame with your hands like I am, and my visual perception and fix-it skills are near zero, my natural capabilities, you don't want to be an engineer. Um, but within these following six categories, or five, I'll see how many I mention. Um, that's really the big filter. Are you more of a word person? Are you more of a people person? Are you more of a STEM person, science, technology, engineering, and math? Are you more social? Are you more, um, let's see, a combination of word and people? Uh, are you a combination of STEM and people? Like a doctor would be a good STEM and people career. Are you more of a data and details person? So that could either be something like an accountant or uh, a computer programmer, what they call software engineer now. Or at your core, are you really very entrepreneurial? You just like the idea of coming up with a business and an idea and making it happen. That's probably as specific as you want to get. Although there are endless quote tests like the Myers-Briggs strong interest inventory, but their validity is suspect enough that I really don't recommend them. The only test that I really recommend is the one that's somehow in this era viewed as most controversial, is the IQ test or its proxies, like the SAT, GRE, LSAT, etc. Those are the most predictive of job success in terms of a category of jobs. So in other words, if you have a high IQ, say 100, really super high IQ is like 130 plus, high IQ is like 115 to 130. Uh, Average IQ is basically between 90 and 110. That 110 to 115 range is in the middle. Um, there are certain categories of jobs you're going to do well. You're not going to be a good, researcher uh, if you have an IQ of less than 120. You may struggle your way to mediocrity, but that's not where you want to be. Uh, People whose IQs are in the, or the LSATs that are in the, you know, 50th to 80th or 75th percentile tend to do best in jobs that have a fair amount of structure and routine. And yeah, there's some creativity involved, but where there is at least some structure that's provide intellectual structure for your work that's would enable you to more likely to succeed. Once you've identified, and how do you even look at those kind of careers? That's what my book Careers for Dummies is designed to do. It has a total of 340 careers in each of those categories that I just mentioned, with a little, 100 to 200 word, hopefully entertaining introduction to that career, plus a link for more information. So as you look through the category of careers that best fits you, for example, there is a separate section for word and people careers for that intersection. Um, then yes, click on the link that's in the book. But even if you don't get the book, um, if let's say you want to just get some free listings of careers, there's something called the Occupational Outlook Handbook that exists on the web. You can just Google it, and they have big long lists of careers. They're not quite as simply organized as those in Careers for Dummies, but they're useful. Um, then the next thing to do after that to verify that it really is a good career for you is not the old-fashioned informational interview. not only are people less likely than ever to respond to your request for an informational interview, it's still only a sample of one. It's one person. That person could love their career, hate their career. I'm a career counselor. I do love it. But there are a lot of people who are struggling and don't like it. So you're going to get a very biased sample. Whereas if you Google the name of the career, let's say it is career counselor, and the word career, like to looking at the career of career counseling, or of geologist and career, or entrepreneur and career, or graphic artist and career, whatever. And then usually near the top, one of the first few um, search results is usually going to be one or more people's experiences with that career. And so therefore, in a relatively short amount of time, you can check out a whole bunch of different people's perceptions without having to hope that somebody who you've requested an informational interview with will respond. Also, videos. I found my clients, in the end, we're visual species. So looking at videos. So if you use the videos tab in Google and search on, for example, architect careers or accountant careers or whatever, and look on the videos tab, you may well see some videos. And the particularly useful titles would be something that'll say like a day in the life, or what it's typically like to be whatever, astrophysicist. You can often, in a very short amount of time for free, get a pretty good sample of what it's really like. That's really the most valid way to get information about a career. That said, that Occupational Outlook Handbook, as well as my Careers for Dummies, has some pretty authoritative information. I write in a more informal style, so it's not so boring. But the Occupational Outlook Handbook is authoritative, but a little stuffy. But it's free. My book, I think the list price is going to be $25. I think probably on Amazon it'll be like 20 or something. The last thing I really want to talk about is overrated and underrated careers that I want to particularly call to your attention. Everybody has been aware that healthcare careers are growing because of the aging boomers and because we're going to be covering ever more people. And frankly, we're covering them now just in a scattered way. And the system is broken. It's overwhelmed. And it is many doctors, for example, leave the profession. They're overwhelmed with the paperwork, reduced reimbursements, and the fear of single payer, where their salaries, they've got sometimes $200,000, $300,000 in debt from medical school, and they earn very little money after that in their residency, and now their insurance reimbursements are way down, and a lot of non-compliant patients, and so a lot of them are leaving, and that's really true of. The system is pretty overwhelmed, and also it can wear at you to be seeing sick patients all the time, and unfortunately, the big diseases. We don't have great answers yet for cancer, heart disease, and diabetes. So I'm not a big fan of health careers with the following exceptions. Optometrist, because you do cure nearly every patient. You have regular hours. There's no night and weekend calls. Audiologist, hearing aids getting ever better. And orthodontist. It's a long training, orthodonture. I think it's I don't want to say, but it's probably pretty much a decade after college. But it's very rewarding because you do succeed with nearly every patient and you develop a relationship with them because you see them all the time. Lovely career, and they're very highly paid. And I think it's less subject to being taken over by single payer or whatever because it often is viewed as largely cosmetic. So the pay may remain pretty good. Also, physician assistant is pretty good. In our attempt to try to quote cover, to the extent we'll be covering it, everybody, they're going to have to use lower paid, lower trained professionals to do a lot of the work. And physician assistants and nurse practitioners are going to do much of the work that doctors used to do. But they still make a six-figure salary. They do tend to have the kind of patients where you can succeed. So a good career and a hell of a lot shorter and less expensive training. So for those who are healthcare oriented, physician assistant, optometrist, orthodontist, and audiologist are my favorites. The other overrated career is lawyer. Surveys show that roughly 75% of lawyers are unhappy. It's very contentious. There's a lot of ethical temptations, and hours can be long, and it can be very dry. It's not like on TV. You're very often poring over long documents. You're negotiating, you're threatening. It's often very much not fun. That's why so many lawyers like to be mediators, but there aren't enough mediator gigs to go around. The other thing that's overrated is nonprofit work. Because many people, especially I think in today's era, especially in the Trump era, are very motivated to work for nonprofit causes. Um, the There's a lot of people, a lot of the gigs are volunteer gigs, or when they pay, the pay is usually poor, and they expect you to work very long hours because you believe in the cause. And nonprofits tend to be so, what's the word, consensus driven in the way that decisions are made, that things can go very, very slowly, meeting after meeting after meeting, and not very much done. And finally, when you agree on something, it tends to be the lowest common denominator, that which everybody can agree to. Underrated is the whole area of federal government jobs. The benefits are non-pareil. Job security is non-pareil. Vacation is excellent. And a recent study found that federal workers actually, for the same work, get paid more than the for-profit, I guess, for-profit companies. I guess, there isn't as much accountability for how carefully you spend the dollars. That's not necessarily true, but it's probably an overstatement. But certainly it is a fact that government jobs for the same work are now paying more. So those are my thoughts about choosing a career. I'm going to create a video next on landing a career, also tips from my forthcoming book, Careers for Dummies. I am Marty Nemko, and I hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching.